All right, thank you guys so much for being here this afternoon. My name is Robert Beniaga. I'm one of the regional educators for Fantastic Sam's out here in the Dallas area. And today I'm going to be talking about balayages and highlighting, foil highlighting, and how we could combine the two things together to give you an overall look. And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of show this mannequin head. I got half of this done, and I'm going to complete the other half to show you how I did this. And I actually have some before and after shots of the foil placement of this particular technique, as well as some still shots to talk a little bit about how I achieved this type of look. And I'm gonna, I think this is an okay view, but I could also I could try another view in a second, but let me go ahead and just pull this up on this side. Okay, and so on this mannequin head, this is what we started with. Let me see if I could get a light on here just a little teeny bit better. I had to switch cameras because it wasn't working right. Let's see if I can get a little bit better light on the subject there. Okay. A little bit better. So I started off with the mannequin head, just your normal, Erica mannequin. So this one, she's like a level 6. And what I went through and had done on the other side here is I went through more of a halo pattern highlight, like our educator from the desert region, Jessica, had demonstrated yesterday. But then I had gone back through between the foils with more of a freehand painting or balayage technique. So we're combining both foils and a balayage to give a much more saturated look. Okay, so when you think about like this type of a look, let me see. I'm just super curious to see if this view will be better on the mannequin here. Hold on. Okay, ooh, it's a little bit flary, but so this is just on the hair right through here. You can see this is what I'm starting with. And then I'm gonna go ahead and spin this around a little bit more. You know what, I'm not really happy with this view, but I'll do it for just the meantime. Just seeing like this kind of saturation that I got on the ends from this, just from one application. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to my other view because I'm not happy with this. So anyway, so you can see like how we have a lot more saturation on the mid shaft and ends than we do because if we think we're just doing normal foil highlights, a lot of times we just get highlights throughout the hair from roots to ends, and then we don't really always get that saturation that a lot of clients are looking for like this on the mid shaft and end. So that's why I went back through and painted in between this. And this particular mannequin head, when I post the during pictures of this, you probably see this a little bit better because I know that these lights are kind of warm. But within working with this technique, I find that it's really helpful to give you get a better saturation on mid shaft and ends, and also allows you to bring up a lot of the foils lighter than just a straight up balayage would do. And a lot of times, like when we talk about in the consultation with our guests between like the techniques with a balayage, a lot of times we're thinking about an open air painting type of technique. When we think about the look of a balayage, we're getting more of that graduation of color from a little bit to a lot more, and that's kind of the allure or the benefit of a balayage is like one thing is that it gets more saturation on the ends, but also it gets a more natural look as well as grows out softer. But the one thing, like one kind of downside of a balayage is sometimes it's not the application technique, because it is more of an application technique as well as an overall look. A lot of times if you try to freehand paint a highlight, it might not lift enough. Also, there might be situations where you don't really have a good amount of control because of maybe the hair texture, the length of the hair, or something like that, that you're not able to kind of get the perfect processing environment for a freehand paint balayage type of look. So that's where the foils come in. I a lot of times when I think about the differences in like boiling water in a pot with the lid on the pot versus just letting the water boil with no lid. The pot with the lid on it, the water is going to boil a lot faster, a lot quicker, right? Whereas the one that doesn't have a lid, it's going to take a little bit longer for it to come up to heat and actually start to boil. If you think about like, when we're dealing with foils, we're sealing in that product, so the chemical action of our lightener or coloring product really can concentrate on the hair that's within the foil. If we're painting a product on the surface of the hair, and especially if we were not maybe getting a thick enough saturation of our lightener or color on the hair, if we're not allowing that, if that's getting exposed to like air conditioning or drying out, or maybe the client is moving around and they smudge off some of the product on the chair or something like that, we might not get even processing. So, a lot of times with a balayage and open air technique, that's kind of the downside of that type of a technique. Even though by painting it on and everything, we kind of feel like it's a bit more of an artistic technique. So utilizing a technique like this, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You have the control and the high contrast of being able to paint a foil in the hair as well as the placement. And then you also have the kind of the freedom to saturate the ends a little bit more in a freeform technique. Now on this mannequin head, I just used lightener on her. There has been no toning, there's been no root shading, there's been nothing going on this hair, with the exception of a blow dry and a bit of a curling iron, just to give it some movement. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and you can kind of see, like, again, this is like the original hair that we started out with. And after one application, this is the kind of hair that we're done with. And my placement on this was I dropped the crown out, I placed my foils in and around the hairline, and then I painted in between the foils as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of brush this through a little bit, just so you can kind of see the way this color sits within the mannequin head. So you can kind of see like how I have my better contrast where my foils were that are closer up, and then I have more of this saturation through the ends where I painted in my lightener between the foils, okay? And this is a real similar technique to, for those of you guys that have some of last year's pictures hanging up in your salon, the girl with the long brown hair and the red dress for the nap pictures we had this past year. I actually did the color on her very, very similar to how I'm approaching this mannequin head as well. So just so that you guys know, like on that particular look, that's how that model with it was approached for the NAF kits from or posters collection from this year. So you can see how this is. We have the closer foil action, and then in between that, we have more of the saturation from the balayage, okay? And so this was, again, no toning, I didn't backcomb any of the sections or anything like that. It's just straight up area, kind of a modified area highlight placement, and then going back through with a higher volume lightener and going in between the foils to give us more of that saturated look. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk about how we're gonna achieve that right now. I'm gonna go ahead and section this off. So sectioning is a big key to actually achieving looks quickly, as well as being able to control your work. And if you're watching this on a phone, and maybe I don't know if the views of people that are in this session, if they're in the way, you could always like kind of touch it and move it out of the way. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and section this out first, and it's a very simple sectioning. Again, since I already did one half of the head, I'm really just going to concentrate on the half that's not done. So first off, one of the biggest things that you want to think about when it comes to, highlights is in your consultation with your guest, where is the hair going to be sitting? How are they actually, going to style their hair, as well as how are they going to style their hair, but how do they wear their hair? A lot of times a client might bring you the picture of the beach waves, right? And whoa, I don't want to make sure I don't get that dark. Um, They might bring you the picture of the beach wave, and then they don't actually style their hair at all. So like, especially if a client only has like all one length hair like this, unless they curl their hair or do something with it to make it move, it's not really going to look like anything. It's not going to look like the picture. And so sometimes that's a little bit of a disconnect for guests, but they have to understand that being able to, the look that they're of a picture that they might bring in, knowing all the steps that it takes to actually achieve that picture. And if they're not, and if they have all one length hair and they're not really going to do a lot of the things that it requires to, get that look, then they might kind of get upset. They might get upset that you didn't do the right type of technique or you didn't approach it the right way. But they have to make sure that they know that products, styling, all those make a big difference in how to actually achieve the look that they're bringing in. Okay, so first off, I wanted to section off my bang area, and so showing you about like where the bang area is. If we think about from high recession to about the point of the on the head, where a little bit past where you would where the hair would kind of naturally where the comb would come away from the head. So right past the round of the head, that's where I'm actually taking this fringe or bang area section. Okay. And this could be like a triangle, it could be like a kind of a crescent shape, but something that's going to fit around this area. Because again, this is really key, making sure that we're not dipping down further than a high recession area. So I'll go ahead and section this out. And then my next section for the sides, I'm just going to take from about right in back of the ear to the crown area. Okay. And this last section in the back, wait, so you can see that a little better. And if you're just doing the front, you could just, stop right there. But a lot of times, if you're kind of coming into working with a client with longer hair, this area around the neckline, they see that in the front. So it's really nice to have some of that in the mix or in the technique. So I'm gonna go just straight down from the back of the head, right down the back center, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull this hair up. So that way we expose the hairline. And then this is actually where we're going to start our placement of our foils. Okay. So I wanted to do this just in real time, just so you guys could kind of see the procedure of how to do it so that it's not all pre-sectioned out right away. But that way you can kind of get that visual of what we're actually doing with our guest when we sit her in the chair. Okay. So to get this hair out of the way. And for products, I'm going to be using, you have a couple of different lightener choices. You could use either, your bleach and shine or your blondest blonde. I'm going to choose to use the blondest blonde. And so first off, I'm just going to go ahead and use uh, equal parts of color generator and lightening powder. And I'm going to start with my foils. So with the foils, those are going to process a little faster, or they're going to process with a higher amount of lift ability. I'm going to be using a lower volume color generator with that. So I'm going to use like 20 volume. And then when we go back in between the foils, we're going to go back in with 40 volume with that. That way, when we go through and do that open air painting, we're dealing with a higher lift. And because again, I mean, we could use the same volume of color generator, but I know that the processing is probably going to be, it's not going to get as light as we achieved on the other side. Okay. So again, I some other things that you guys might have at your disposal. when it comes to working with products, some of you guys might already have the uh, the new Royal Treatment Professional Bond Root Builder that you can add to your color or your lightener as well. And that's really helpful for keeping the bonds intact on the hair. And I've already sprayed this hair with some Bond and Seal, that is this, so that it keeps the hair intact as we're lightening. Okay, so again, I didn't do any back combing of this hair. I didn't do anything like where it's going to take a long time to do, because I kind of feel like this kind of a technique, you do want to have it work pretty quick for you and make it easy. So again, thinking about the hairline of how this is set up, we're going to be working with a foil in the center, a foil on the side, and then we're going to work in a little bit in the middle of that as well. So I want to say in total, we'll probably have about 4 foils back and through here. And I'm going to stop at the crown area, and you could take that further up. But I really wanted to just stop right about there because I kind of wanted to have more of that drop crown effect. But when we go back through between the foils, I'll show you what I'm talking about with that. And so yesterday I was really happy listening to Jessica because, and again, she posted that video onto our Fantastic Fans Education Facebook group. And so you guys can go ahead and look at that. But she had some great tips about working with foils. And again, when it comes to working with foils, I know that some of you guys have worked with foils for a really long time. Some of you guys might be newer to foils. But the biggest thing when it comes to foils is, no matter how you've learned how to do them, is just kind of always taking a look back at how you're doing things and making sure that it works for you, meaning that it's something that you could pull off quickly, something that is neat, something that works effectively for the technique that you're doing, how you fold the foil on the inside or the outside, depending on what's going on, how you weave, how long it takes you to weave, and how long it takes you to put a foil in. All those things make a difference because of the fact that the longer it takes you to do each and every individual foil, the more it's going to add to the time that it takes for you to do the service, okay? So you notice that, like, as far as applying my foils in, I could do a lot of different things. Like, I just went through, weaved, and I pushed through so that the hair dropped out. You could go back through and grab your foils this way to put the hair in. Some of you guys, if you really want that balayage type of, that kind of feel or look, you might go back through and kind of maybe paint in this top surface if you're leaving a little bit of dimension at the root area. So let me flip this around so you can see, I'm painting that in more at an angle and just on the top surface of this hair strand. And then you can come back through, take your foil, stick it onto the foil because now it will hold to that product on it. And then you can go ahead and saturate your ends a little bit heavier. Always still working with that angle. And I'm bringing this down so that I'm not coming all the way down to the end of the foil. Okay, if I'm working with really long hair and if I wanted to leave the shadow at the root or a little bit of dimension or negative space up there, I don't really want any lightener here because when I put this up, it will touch the top. If I do come all the way down here, I could actually fold this into thirds so that so none of it touches that top area. But a lot of times when you're dealing with really long hair, sometimes the easier thing to do is just actually put 2 foils on top of each other. You kind of want to be aware of how much product or foil that you're using, because foil is a product. And again, for those of you that keep track of the salon costs of our products and stuff like that, foil has gotten very, very expensive. Same thing with gloves and stuff like that. So making sure that you're well aware of that, and not using more than you need to is really important. If you have short hair, you don't need long foils, so that's one of those type of things too that I think is really, really important to think about. So on through here, I've wove that hair. I'm just going back through. I'm placing the foil underneath with my finger. because this hair isn't really that long, I'm not really worried about trying to use a comb to get the um, to get the foil up into the hair. It's not always necessary to do that, but I know that's, a lot of times some people like to always use kind of use the comb to get the foil up in there. The one thing that's very important in your weaving or foiling technique, and especially we'll talk about that in the front, is making sure that your sections are clean and that your weaving is consistent. When I go back through and fold the sides of my foils, I want to make sure that I'm denting the foil in so that I can fold cleanly. And you want to make sure too that your foil or your section is not that you're working in is not wider than the foil that you're working with, okay? So I'm getting to the point of where I am going to start dropping out the crown area. And let me show you like where I'm at through here and where my placement has been so far. So I have a foil underneath, a foil on the side, a foil underneath in the middle, and then now I'm going to go starting to go a little bit more horizontal for my placement. You could either once you have the hair that you're going to leave out, if you want to weave off of that section, you can. Just make sure that your section is consistent and that you're not digging into different parts of that. Because again, if you're digging, when you lay your foil in, it's not wherever there's a dip, there actually will be that's where the foil will drag down to. And if closeness to the root area is a concern of yours, then it's not going to get as close as you might want it to. Okay, so just keep in mind that consistency of your weaving is super important to be able to get close if that's what you're looking for, as well as cleanliness of your sections. As far as getting my saturation, again, with these foils, I want to make sure that I get good saturation in my foils. A lot of times, like if you're dealing with hair that's long and you have dry spots in there, where you have a dry spot, you're not going to have the lift. And also when you go ahead and fold up your foil, make sure that you don't crease your foil too hard right here, because again, if you have a real hard crease, you might swish or push the lightener off the hair. And then again, that might, if you've ever taken down a foil and you've seen a shadow where the fold was, that's probably a little bit of what happened is that the foil might have, when it got creased, the lightener or the color product got pushed away off the hair, and that's why there's a little bit of a shadow through there. So this is gonna be the last foil on the back. It's right above the occipital bone, right below the crown, and it's at a horizontal. And again, as far as how I'm taking my hair, I have good tension on the hair. I have the foil in there, and I could just lay that in and use the hair to hold that foil on there. And once I get product on there, I could go through and apply the rest of it, making sure I flip my ends up to get good saturation. And then I'm gonna go ahead and bring this up. And again, I'm just keeping my hand in there. I'm not pushing the foil down. I don't want it to slide down onto the previous foils. And then I'm gonna, again, leave the crown out. I'm gonna go ahead in the sides now. And again, you can start where you feel it's necessary to work. And generally we start in the back because of the fact that, we're able to, if that comes up faster, we could go through and, you know, bring, we could bring the client to the shampoo bowl and rinse those areas out. Where I want to get closer, I'm gonna go a little finer. So I'm going finer around the front hairline here. Again, I have my foil. I'm just gonna bring that hair up, bring my foil in, and I'm making sure I center my foil in my section, so it's not off to one side or anything like that. I'm applying my product. And then once I dry my brush off a little bit more, I could come up to the top edge of that so that I don't get a lot of product all stuck on to, at the top where it might bleed mark. And again, this is where like if you fold your foils on the outside of the foil, it's really helpful because like if you did slip right through here or you felt the foil move, you could always flip that up and readjust it. Okay, I'm gonna turn that to the side a little bit more just so we can kind of see a little bit better how that is. So again, I'm working on a diagonal all around the side just because of the fact that that really helps to move a little bit better and doesn't leave us, a hard line around the front hairline. A lot of times diagonals are great for blending, okay? You can bring that up, center the foil in the section. I'm using the hair to hold the foil on there and away from the edge. I at first go get the product on there. I get my ends. I'm off to the side just so that you kind of see this a little bit better. Go side to side to kind of get the ends saturated, and I've dried my brush off a little bit. Now I can come back through here and move that foil up a little bit more, move the product up on the foil, and now I can go back through and fold this. Okay, through here. Yeah. And then again, I'm folding this. I'm gonna bring the tail comb up, crease that so that I could fold that here, down to here so I could fold that. And that way we have the foil right there, okay? And now I'm gonna go ahead and do that on these next couple of ones up into this side. And I think I ended up stopping on this side. Let me see, just to double check. And you can kind of see how the placement on this side was, with our highlights. So I think I stopped right about, let's say like right about here is where we stop. So if I think about being in line with that, that's like right above the round of the head is where we stop the sections on the side. So like maybe one or two more just right through here. Okay. So I'll go ahead, weave that. And on some of these side ones, I'm actually applying the lightener on a diagonal, as well as I'm giving myself a little bit of negative space at the root area so that I have a little bit more depth toward this back. So, I'm going closer at the front, angling down as I get to the back of the foil. And this is going to be the last foil on through the side. Again, you could bring this higher up if you want to. I just wanted to leave a little bit more depth at the top area so that we get more of that kind of lightning effect all around the front halo area. And a lot of times, if you're dealing with really long hair, or maybe you were dealing with hair that's been previously colored and stuff like that, and you're not really sure how things are going to lift, and again, these are things that you want to find out in the consultation. Hopefully, that your client was honest enough to tell you if they have previous color on their hair. Sometimes they won't tell you the truth about that, and you won't know until you open up that foil and that you start to notice that weird things are happening. But if that happens, if you're starting to see like things are not lifting enough, just make sure that you have enough product um, back on there. You might have to check your foils periodically to see if you have to go back through and apply more product, like if it's like kind of moved down or dried up or something like that, or if it's a stubborn spot. So now this in this front area, what I did is I made sure that I took really fine weaves and I had them really close together through here. So, one of the things I teach in classes sometimes is where we have this fine weave first. I recommend to pull this up and away and then take that really fine veil of hair here first to really get close to the hairline, okay? And this is a way that you could also achieve like kind of that money piece type of look as well. You could do this a couple of times. You could slice this too, but I usually feel like having a like really close fine weave like this sometimes gives you the concentration of color that you're looking for without having to look too hot at the root, And again, if you have your section that's too thick in a slice, it's just not going to lift as nice. So that's why I always kind of feel it's easier to make sure that you have a real fine weave to complete that front area. So if you want to, here, since we want to keep that hair out of the pine space, we can go through and fold that an extra time. And I'll show you another way to fold this just so that, we if you're working with longer hair and you need to block a certain area, it's going to mix a little bit more product here. And in the foils, I'm still staying with a 20 volume color generator. If there's any questions or anything like that, you guys could put them in the chat or come up off of mute and ask. So now that hair that I had pinned up, I could take that down. Again, bring the hair up, keep tension on it, and then pull it down so that it helps keep the foil in place, but it doesn't crush that other foil that's underneath that. And that's really, really important when you're dealing with things that are right on the face. I usually feel sometimes this might be the hard part for a lot of stylists, and it takes practice to have kind of like a light hand for this area because of the fact that you don't, this is an area that it makes a difference because the client sees it, it's right in front of their face. So making sure this one is in a good spot and placed well. Again, this is helpful again if you fold it on the outside of your foil. If you need to, you could, if it moved, you can always take this fold up here, push that down a little bit more so that it increases the closeness. And then here's another way that you could fold this foil so that it doesn't touch at the root, or if you need to separate certain areas, is you could fold in thirds. So fold that one like that, and then fold the next one like this, so that it kind of covers that up, and that product that was on the ends doesn't go at the root area, okay? So that is that one. And then we'll get a couple more in through this front area, or in the fringe area, because again, the fringe area extends from the front hairline, and then when we think about where the comb rocks, that space that's between that here and then top of the head. So we wanted to make sure that we're getting some lightness in these areas, so we kind of match what's going on in this area. Okay. So I go back through, weave in through here, get my foil in, keep my elevation, bring the hair down on that. Oops, all coming in. Gonna take that. And then this last one through here, I'm starting to go at a little bit more of an angle, kind of to this last one, just so that we end up in this diagonal spreads a little bit more from the fringe area into the side area. Okay, so this will be the last foil up on through the top, and then we can get into our balayage placement with our open air technique. Okay, so now we got the foils in. I'm going to be introducing another tool, which you guys might have in the shop already, is your highlighting board. Either your highlighting board or paddles, whichever ones you guys have are fine. They all do the same type of thing. And if you don't have a board or a paddle, you could always use your hand, or you could also use, um, you know, a wide tooth comb or just something that really is, just something that you could lay the hair on top of, to spread the lightener through the ends. So I'll show you the technique, the placement again. You have these foils in the fringe area, the bang area. We have these ones in the side, and then these ones in the back. And now, so all this hair that's in between all this hair, all between the foils here, we're gonna go back through this and actually do like I've heard some people refer to it as a tip out, but basically you're gonna go back through and balayage or freehand paint lightener in between some of this hair so that you get better saturation, and that way you get a little bit more lightening going on in this technique. So I'm gonna go back through now. I'm remixing some lightener. I'm gonna go back in and use a 40 volume this time. So I have the mixing ratio for my blonde and blonde in this instance is equal parts. And the thing with a lightener is you want to make sure that you're mixing it to like roughly manufacturer directions. Like manufacturers will recommend usually a 1 to 1, 1 to 1.5, 1 to 2, sometimes 1 to 2.5 mixing ratio. And that's really going to be dependent on the technique that you're doing. But just be aware that if you mix too much color generator in with your product, it's going to make the bleach or the lightener actually kind of weak. That's why chemicals are really important, that you do follow procedures and directions with the chemicals, because of the fact that if the mixtures are off, the product is not going to perform like you kind of want it to perform, okay? And since I'm going to be working open air or freehand painting, I am going to actually work with some gloves on this, just so that I can protect my hands. And some of you guys, it's a great habit to actually get into using gloves even when you're foiling. But when you're kind of doing anything uh, where you're going to touch color, make sure that you protect your hand, okay? So now, back through here, I'm going to start off in the back and then go to the front, same way that we did this last, put our coils in. So I'm going to lift these up, and, I could go on the very bottom, this very bottom piece, and I'm gonna go ahead and use a clip to hold these foils up out of the way. And this is why, again, good clean sectioning is helpful, so that you have good control of in this type of a situation. So I'm going to take this hair that's between this foil. I have this that's going to lay on top of, and then this hair, this foil is going to sandwich it on top of that. So I'm not worried about the product touching any area, or the lightener touching any of the hair. It's going to be kind of sandwiched between a foil as well. I'm going to put a little bit of product just on my board, just so that I get the underneath, and I'm over directing this hair slightly to the side, just so that when in natural fall, it's going to come back down and soften up. And I could paint this, I don't have to go too high up on this. I really just want to tip it out or get that on the mid lengths and ends, but I want to make sure that I get a good blend. So usually in a downward painting motion is going to be applying my product. If I want to blend this area up here, I could go back with my brush a little bit more, and then just making sure to double check my saturation underneath this area first before I let that go. I could always flip the hair over, but I just want to make sure that I have enough product, that the product is mixed thick enough, and that I'm actually applying enough product heavy enough to coat and cover that hair before I let that go, okay? So then I could drop my foil down, down, and then I could take this hair that is in between the next foils, Again, I'm going to over direct this slightly to the side so that when it falls back into natural fall, it softens up, okay? So think about that. If I apply the color and I've over directed it to the side, when it comes back in natural fall, the line's gonna soften up. And that's why I didn't have to go back through and back comb all this hair. I'm just really utilizing the natural fall of the hair to be able to achieve softness. Okay, so in a downward motion, I'm painting my lightener on. If I need to blend, I'll backstroke that a little bit more, then come underneath through here and apply my product to both sides of this hair, okay? And think about like how hair naturally is. It's thicker at the root area, it's thinner on the ends. If you need, a lot of times even in a regular balayage, sometimes you need to add more hair to those ends because it's so thinned out that you don't really see the contrast or the highlight or the lightener in those areas. So by doing it this way, having the foils to add contrast and coming back in between the foils to give yourself a little bit more saturation is a great way to kind of get that lived in beachy look right away after just like one application, okay? And so the rest of this hair through here, I'm gonna take a little bit more hair that's in between these foils. Go ahead and grab some of this too, okay? And again, you don't have to hold the board that way. You can go through and introduce your painting technique like this first. Blend it in, make sure that you get the underneath area. And again, like I usually like the board, or you could also use like a paddle if you have one of these ones, to get that underneath the hair. And then use the brush very flat to apply that product. And then let that go. And then finishing off, let's see, maybe just a little bit of this hair on top, last bit. And again, you don't have to go way high up on these ones because you have the foils kind of coming up closer. You're doing this just to be able to get stuff more on the mid shaft and ends to get more saturation. Because a lot of times that kind of beachy lived in type of look is almost like the kind of look that a client would get if they had like a couple of highlighting appointments done. All right. So now we have these side areas. So I'm gonna do that same type of thing that we did on the back into the side. So I'm gonna go ahead, grab this hair, paint this in on through the sides. Make sure we saturate our ends really well. And again, for like you've seen on the other side, I mean, this is exactly how I did the other side of this mannequin head, and it ends up being quite a lot of color, and especially when you're consulting with your guests, talking about how much blonde they want to be, and if they're kind of an introduction to you to highlights and stuff like that, and you don't want to get them totally chemically dependent on you just yet. Um, this is a great way to kind of give them a little bit more than just what your normal area highlight would do. Okay. But again, it's kind of easy to get kind of crazy and get kind of overboard on this type of a technique too, because it's like a little bit is good and a lot is kind of better. So you just always have to think about how much how much change is happening, as well as think about your client's natural base color. Because if you're dealing with a darker base color, a little bit of lightness, and especially if they have longer hair, goes a long way on someone that has, not a lot of highlights or they have darker hair. Okay, so that this one, let's see, maybe we'll end up. Let's go ahead and get a more right here. And again, I'm not going to go and worry about getting it too close to the top area because I already have my foils going in at the root area. And then finishing up in the bang or the fringe area, all this hair that was left in between these foils here. And you can fold these back so these foils aren't in your client's face. So this will just add some extra lightness, brightness around the front hairline. So again, I don't have to go all the way too close up. I'm about halfway through this area, and you know, I'm going in at an angle with my lightener, keeping the brush really flat. Once I want to blend that, I could back that in a little bit more and then saturate the ends a lot more fully as I get down to the ends, double checking underneath to make sure that I have a good blend underneath, because of the fact that, you have to think about how that hair, how this stuff is covered up underneath to make sure that we don't have any pockets of uncolored hair and that we have a nice even lifting throughout all this area. And if you want to blend this, like you probably see a lot of people on Instagram. I know one of my friends, Wes does hair. A lot of times he'll blend his balayages or his highlights with his finger, like with his pinky or the back of his hand, just to smooth that out if you need extra blending. Okay, so let me kind of show that in the camera, like how this looks. So there we have in between the foils, we have our balayage going on. So areas like this where you still see, some hair where the lighteners start to soak in, make sure that you come back over this and apply lightener a little bit heavier on top of that. Keep the brush really flat and it won't brush the product away as much. Back it in to blend it, go down to lay more on. Okay, it's kind of like you're putting cream cheese on a bagel. You're not spreading butter around there. You're trying to slam it down with a lot more product on there. Okay, so that is how we achieved this type of look on this side. Okay, on this mannequin type of head. And again, the crown area, this wasn't colored at all, but this area, like you kind of see in this lighting, how you got that mix of what a closeness with the foils and then the saturation with the color in the freehand paint through the ends, okay? And I'll post a finished look on when both sides are complete with this video on the Facebook group, but I wanna thank you guys so much for joining me this afternoon to talk about this technique, and hopefully this was helpful for some of you guys in being able to introduce balayage as well as foiling to your guests in a quick amount of time without any backcombing, without anything like that, okay? So if you have any questions, I don't know, you can post them on the Facebook group, or you could send, for those of you guys that have sent in, when to register for this class, you can always email me directly, Robert Arbanyaga at fantasticsams.com. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you. Have a great day.